Welcome to part 4 of Rethinking Social Entrepreneurship with Trico Charitable Foundation. At the end of part 3, we had introduced our Blender tool and we had discussed how it can be used as a diagnostic tool to identify signs of momentum, but also pressure points within a model and how organizations are blending together the social and entrepreneurial. And this has a real impact on how organizations are able to capture the pull of markets and when social entrepreneurship is the best way to solve a social problem. In this session, we are going to actually run through some real-world examples of how organizations blend together the social and entrepreneurial. And at the end, we're going to talk about how this move from definition to potential, understanding our North Star question, and gaining a deeper understanding of how organizations bring together the social and entrepreneurial can actually usher in a new era of creativity and understanding. Let's run through the example of Turnaround Couriers. Turnaround Couriers was the 2013 recipient of one of our Social Enterprise with a Z awards. And what they do is they work with at-risk youth through bike courier services. Here's them as we run them through the blender. So their social mission is steady employment for job-ready at-risk youth. Their social model is to employ job-ready at-risk youth as bike couriers. The customer need they're addressing is those courier services. So fast, reliable, competitively priced delivery. And then this last question asks, beyond a customer buying social, could your social model's role in addressing the customer's needs be replaced by traditional business, one that does not use the social model? And the answer is yes. Other people who do not have this social model, who do not hire at-risk youth as their bike couriers, are able to provide these services. If we go to the other row around assessing your social model's impact on costs and pricing, what cost does your social model add to your venture? They have some training that they do. They have advances in equipment. So they help these youth actually purchase the bikes, helmets, things like that. And then because they're working with an at-risk population, they need to be able to be flexible around individuals not showing up to work. So can they pass those costs on to the customers? Yes. They actually live in what is called the profit pocket. So the profit pocket is actually something that we're finding a lot of social enterprises are living in. And this is the idea that they can survive with lower profits and being able to cover their social costs. So if we look at an example, a traditional business who is a widget maker, they're able to actually do their pricing so that they make $1,000 profit per widget. And they're really happy with this. Now, a social enterprise who might be working in this space and also be making widgets can actually live within that profit pocket of $1,000. And they can actually say that, you know what, we're comfortable with having $500 of that as being added social costs. Because of the population we work with, we have additional costs, and about half of our profit goes to that. And then we can still make $500 profit per widget. So we're actually pretty happy. We're living in this space where we can survive with lower profits because we can cover the costs of our social mission. But the challenge is if the social enterprise gets too big, and it takes away too many customers from the traditional business, they can respond. And so, for example, they can actually potentially lower their profit margin, their price point, meaning their profit is reduced, and they can undercut the social enterprise. So say that for-profit business says, you know what, I'm going to charge $600 less. And this means that instead of $1,000 profit, I'm going to make $400 profit. They might be okay with that for a certain amount of time. However, the social enterprise is now going to be in a really tough position because if they're in a place where what they can charge for that widget is reduced, and they're only making $400 profit, they now can't cover those added social costs, and they're in a place that is going to be difficult. And this is a difficult way to live. You don't want to have a venture where you're afraid of having more social impact because you'll be on the radar of your competition. So living in the profit pocket, which lots of social entrepreneurs do, can work, but you want to be aware of the risk that is involved with that. So we said, yes, they're living in the profit pocket. So they have the security of affordability, but they need to be aware that there might be some challenges with that. The next question is, beyond a customer buying social, how does your social model enhance the value of your product or services? And for them, it doesn't. The fact that they work with at-risk youth doesn't make the bike courier services better. And then the final question is around that enhanced value piece. If your social model does enhance the value of your product/services, is your customer willing or able to pay more for that enhanced value? And we've already said that there isn't an enhanced value. So the answer here would be no. And then we go out to the outer columns based on these responses. So if we go to the degree to which the social model addresses the customer needs, we can actually highlight where they feel like they're falling. So for them, the social model has a role in addressing the customer needs, but the role could be replaced by traditional business. Traditional business could come in, other couriers could come in that aren't hiring at-risk youth. And then on the other side of the blender, when we think about how the social model impacts costs and pricing, well, they're in that middle space. The social model adds costs that can be passed on to the customer. So there is the security of affordability, but being aware that they are surviving in that profit pocket. And where I want to go with this now is tell you actually where they're at. Turnaround couriers wanted to help more individuals, and they looked at different ways that they could expand their business so they could hire more at-risk youth. And they were actually approached by an app. And this app wanted to deliver food. And they jumped at this chance. They actually rebranded. They got bikes with thermal bags so they could deliver the hot food. And business was booming. And they were actually looking at scaling into other cities, expanding where they were within the city they work in, and then also looking at new locations. And even with these changes is now moving more into the food delivery service, the blender would actually be filled out the exact same way. And the one thing that the blender highlighted for us is that they need to keep an eye out for competitors. So traditional business can provide the service. And that actually is exactly what happened. So they got very excited about this. They looked at scaling, and then Uber Eats happened. And it was created and it was launched, and they're able to survive, but it has definitely really impacted their growth. And this is really important for two reasons. One, it confirms that if you're successful in a market and other businesses can figure out how to do what you're doing without the additional social costs, they will. They will move into that space. And when we talked about the profit pocket and being able to cover your costs, you need to be aware of that. And you need to be aware of traditional business coming in. And on the other hand, it confirms to us that the blender actually works in terms of giving you a heads up on the issues you need to keep an eye out for. It identified that competition piece. And I do want to note that even though Brenna doesn't use the blender, Brenna of 99 Degree Custom, she was aware that her offering fell in that harmony level, that second box, and was concerned that it could be replicated by other businesses. So she actually really shifted her focus to be in a very specialized section of manufacturing around wearable tech, and is really focused on that area. And that's really hard to copy. And so it could be copied without the social mission and without the social model that hires people with employment barriers. But because her entrepreneurship model is really specialized, she's able to have a little bit of security in that space. Here's another example, and this is hoodies for homeless. And the basic idea of hoodies for homeless is that you buy a hoodie and then a hoodie is donated to someone who is homeless. And they also donated an additional £1. They were in Britain, an additional £1 to a shelter that they were working with. The point I want you to focus on is this is their Twitter page. And here they're saying, we are aiming to keep 8,855 homeless people warm this Christmas. Let's run them through the blender. If we put them through the blender, we can say their social mission is to provide warm clothing for the homeless. Their social model is to use a buy one, give one hoodies model. The customer need they're addressing is a hoodie. And beyond a customer buying social, could your social model's role in addressing the customer's needs be replaced by traditional business? Yes, they could get hoodies from someone else. Then if we go to the next column, assessing your social model's impact on costs and pricing, we can actually see what costs the social model adds to their venture. So one is the cost of the donated hoodie, and then they also donate a British pound per sale. Can you pass those costs on to the customer? Yes, they can. They're likely living in the profit pocket. And then beyond a customer's buying social, how does your social model enhance the value of your products or services? And it doesn't. And then if we look at the piece of where your customer, are they willing to pay for that enhanced value? The answer would be no. And so if we go through the columns and we look at the blend, we've identified that they're in a disconnected tension place in regards to the degree to which the social model addresses the customer needs. So the social model does not have a role in addressing the customer needs, but the purchase funds the social model. So it's the buy social piece. So they have the challenge of multitasking. They have to be good at creating hoodies. They have to be good at donating hoodies and the British pound. They also have customers that might be there to donate the hoodie or might be there for the hoodie itself. And then on the other side, when we look at the social model impacts, how the social model impacts costs and pricing, we have the social model adds costs that can be passed on to the customer. So they have the security of affordability. However, we do have some updates to share about them. So this appeared on their website around Christmas, and it was actually after the deadline. And you'll notice that when they said they wanted to keep 8,855 people warm on their Twitter page, if you actually look at what the first release was, it was 250 hoodies. And even that was a challenge for them to get to that target. And we do believe that they met it, and they've attempted additional releases, but we don't think they're anywhere close to the 8,855 individuals that they wanted to keep warm. So that many hoodies going to individuals who are experiencing homelessness. And this really identifies the challenge of customer persuasion that was diagnosed by the blender. The key insight here is that no matter what model you have, the blender is surprisingly good at giving you a heads up of the potential challenges and opportunities that may exist. I'm now going to run through the example of Ember's staffing solutions. And I'd highly encourage you to actually push pause and check out the case study below and the blender tool that we've provided. And you can actually run this example through the blender yourself. As I said earlier, we find it incredibly valuable to look at different models and run them through these tools. So a bit of background on Embers. Embers helps people living in poverty in the downtown East Side Vancouver, and they began by offering microloans and supporting local businesses. And then one day, a community member came up to Marcia and said, "Look, a lot of the people here are working in day labor halls. So they go down to the day labor hall and they hope that someone will come and hire them for the day." However, he felt that they were being taken advantage of, and he said, "Couldn't we start something that worked as a nonprofit and would actually benefit the individuals in this community?" And so that's exactly what Marcia did. She spent a number of years getting Ember Staffing Solutions set up. And Ember Staffing Solutions work with individuals who are ready to work, so people who have their addictions under control. And they create these contracts and these partnerships with large construction sites and companies where they provide individuals work. And what's really cool about this is because they screen their individuals and make sure they have their addictions under control and they provide supports for them, this has been a valuable asset to their customers because safety is a big issue on job sites. And addiction was a challenge in these downtown East Side day labor halls. So not only are you providing these individuals with work that's paying fair wages and has things like benefits, but you also have something the customers really want, which was reliable, safe labor. And so on the next slide, we're going to run through the blender. And like I said, you can always test this out yourself and push pause, take a chance to read that case study, and see how you think embers would fall on the blender tool. So if we look at what the social mission is for Ember Staffing Solutions, well, they employ individuals with employment barriers to get a better life through employment. Their social model is a day labor service for people who are ready for employment. Their customer need they're addressing is reliable day labor, so that's what they're providing to the construction companies they partner with. And beyond a customer buying social, could your social model's role in addressing the customer's needs be replaced by traditional business? And for them, it would be a no. We talked about that piece of screening these individuals who work on the job sites. And day labor halls and traditional competition in the space don't do that. And so for the customers, the fact that they have clean and sober workers is a huge benefit to the organization. On the other side, when we talk about the social model's impact on costs and pricing, the social model does add additional costs. They have to screen the individuals to make sure their addictions are under control. They pay higher wages than the day labor halls, and they also offer things like benefits. They even have a van where they help the individuals get to the job site, which then makes them more reliable workers. So can you pass those costs on to the customer? Yes. They live in the profit pocket. So they're able to pay these additional costs, cover their social costs while still turning a profit. The next question is, beyond a customer buying social, how does your social model enhance the value of your products or services? For them, they say, you know what, our employees are reliable as they're screened and we make sure their addictions are under control. And we've talked about how that's a big bonus to the construction companies that they're providing workers to. And then finally, if your social model does enhance the value of your product or services, is your customer willing or able to pay more for that enhanced value? The answer is no. They actually charge market rate and what the other competitors in the market charge. So if we go to the outside reaches of the blender, we will go to the degree to which the social model addresses the customer needs. And they're in that space of synergy. So they say that our social model has a role in addressing the customer needs that cannot be replaced by traditional business unless it adopts our social model. So unless traditional business starts screening its workers and providing addiction support, they're going to have a really hard time providing the same service that we do. And they're not going to be able to serve our customers' needs as well as we are. On the other side, how does the social model impact costs and pricing? Well, we've said that they have additional costs and they're living in that profit pocket place. So the social model adds costs that can be passed on to the customer. And I want to make a note about this final box. And they're in this harmony box now, but they're not in the synergy box. And that's because they're not actually charging the customers more based on their enhanced value. And we really haven't found many examples of organizations that do this. A lot of social enterprises seem to stick with what the market rate is. I want to give you an update on Ember Staffing Solutions. This has actually proven to be an incredibly powerful model that has had scale. In 2013, they were awarded one of our Social Enterprise Awards in the under $1 million revenue category. As you can see in this diagram, in 2018, they paid out $6.4 million in wages and benefits to workers in their community. And when we chatted with them in late 2019, they were on track to have $11.2 million in revenue. They have been very successful. And this goes to show you how the blender can be used to identify pressure points and signs of momentum. We think it's a really important tool that you run your own venture through, as we believe that having a better understanding of how you blend the social and entrepreneurial, we can move the social entrepreneurship conversation forward, and you can dive deeper into the power of business models and how they can be harnessed to solve social problems. This actually brings us to our last key point in rethinking social entrepreneurship. And as we said, we feel like if we move from understanding social entrepreneurship from definition, what is on paper, to potential, what it could be, and we zone in on our North Star question of how can we fully harness the power of business models to solve social problems, and we go deeper with that by better understanding how the social and entrepreneurial can combine and how we can harness the pull of markets. We believe that this will usher in a new era of creativity and reimagining. If you look at what Trico Charitable Foundation is focusing on, using business models to address power imbalances that hold social problems in place, a new era of creativity could mean connecting to a wider conversation that is occurring about how we use business models in general. And there's this really interesting conversation that is currently happening. And one person who's talking about this is John Fullerton of the Capital Institute, who said that capitalism practice is the planet, which serves the economy, which serves finance. And he'd really like to see that turned around. He would like that finance actually serves the economy, and that is actually to serve people and planet. And in essence, this is the change that really focuses on power dynamics and power imbalances. And we think this will move the conversation of business models from extractive to regenerative, and also this move from self-centered to other-centered. We think this move will have major ripples and allow us to better address the social problems that we're grappling with in social entrepreneurship. I wanted to plant the seeds of this thinking in your minds. But the creativity we're talking about can apply beyond what Trico Foundation is focusing on. Remember Borreo? Well, they realized that even if they captured the entire skateboard market, they still would not be able to use all of the fishing nets that were being abandoned. And so they started to think about other ways they could use these nets. And they thought, well, let's not just sell skateboards, let's sell hats. And they now have announced a partnership with Patagonia. They also sell other items like sunglasses that are all made from these abandoned fishing nets. And this is an example of creativity, and it should be applauded. But as great as it is an example of a linear progression of a social enterprise. We don't think this represents the new era of creativity and reimagining we're talking about. So first, I'm going to talk about why we think so many social enterprises are struggling with creativity and that we're seeing these linear progressions. And then we're going to share an example of how exciting this new era could be and the types of stories that we need to shine a light on. When we were thinking about creativity and this new era of creativity, we would speak to people about synergistic blends and how the social and entrepreneurial could actually come together, feed off each other, make each other more powerful. And people would nod and think it was an exciting idea. And then they would respond to us with the question of, well, what's more important, the social or the entrepreneurial? And we were surprised by this connection because it's a harmony disconnect question. It's not a synergy question. We really got to wondering why people, when they hear about synergy, they respond with this old school harmony disconnect question. And a metaphor occurred to us. So if we look at these two pictures, they're different from each other. One has two glasses, the other one has one glass. One has yellow and blue, one has green. If I asked you to remove the blue liquid from the pictures, it'd be very easy to do in the first picture. Or if I said to you, what's more important, the blue or the yellow, you could easily say the blue glass because it has greater volume of liquid. So let's just agree these two pictures are quite different, except for in one key aspect. And that aspect is they actually represent the exact same thing. They both depict a combination of blue and yellow. And that's when we realize that is our challenge in the social entrepreneurship space, is that people default to the blends that they know, the blue and yellow blends, the harmony and disconnect models. And they're not thinking about this synergy combination of the two, where it's actually hard to pull apart the blue and the yellow because they just haven't been exposed to these types of models. And we think it's really important that we get past these models where it's just the social beside the entrepreneurial, and we do start thinking about the true synergistic blends and the ways that the social and entrepreneurial can actually build off of one another. The other thing I want to say is that if you had never seen the color green before, and we asked you to combine the yellow and the blue, you wouldn't guess green would come out. You wouldn't be able to do it. Think about when you were a kid, or if you have children, when you first started playing with those primary colors and how amazing the fact is that you can make green from blue plus yellow. It was mind-blowing. And so when people hear about social entrepreneurship, they see the two glasses. They see the blue and the yellow beside each other, not the green one. And that's because they haven't seen that many. They default to what they know. And that's why Trico has really made it our mission to expose organizations and find as many organizations as possible that really capture that synergistic blend, and so that people have examples that they can look at and learn from. And this isn't to say that every single social enterprise should have a synergistic blend. It's actually about flagging that the more disconnected your social and entrepreneurial models are, the more pressure points you're going to have, and the things that you have to watch out for. And it's about inspiring people that there's another way and there's another option to them, where there's fewer pressure points, and it has this amazing potential in this space. And so until we're more aware about these types of models and the potentials of these models, we're not going to be able to move into that space. And that is what our goal is. Our goal is to move into this new era of creativity and reimagining, and showing organizations just the true potential that really blending the social and entrepreneurial together can have. One of our favorite examples of truly creative thinking in this space is Kyle Zimmer. And Kyle was the founder of First Book. And First Book came about because Kyle was a corporate lawyer who volunteered at a soup kitchen, and she noticed that children living in poverty never seemed to have books, and she thought this was terrible. And so she actually set out to provide books to children experiencing poverty, because she felt that, like, if the children had their own books, they'd have this pride of ownership, and it would plant the seed for a love of learning, a love of reading, and that would lead to a love of education. And so she created First Book, where they buy new books and they get donations and they give them to kids in poverty. And this was phenomenally successful. It grew and grew. And the challenge that Kyle was having was that it was based on a donation model. And so she started to think about ways that she could use social enterprise to become less dependent on donations, and it would give her the space to actually explore some new directions and new focuses for the organization. And I think a lot of people in the social enterprise space might be able to come up with a number of possible models that Kyle could use. You could look at a one-for-one model. You could look at a sliding scale where individuals pay based on what their parents make. You could look at you get the first book free and then you pay for others model. But traditional social enterprise models didn't work for Kyle. And she thought outside of the box, and she came up with this ingenious solution that perfectly captures the creativity that we need to bring to this space. So Kyle noticed that because of First Book getting so big and going national, she had these warehouses of books. She had a national trucking distribution chain, and she had relationships with publishers. And she thought about, how can I leverage these resources? And she thought, well, what if I actually approached institutions that buy lots of books for kids, like schools and hospitals? And I said to them, I can buy the books you need in bulk. And because I can buy them in bulk, I can give them to you at a lower price than what you would normally pay. And because I'm buying in such large quantities, I can make some revenue to sustain First Books and fund these other initiatives I want to do. Would you be interested? And these other institutions said yes, because they were saving money. And what's interesting about this is that in addition to the revenue stream, she's also serving her mission by getting books into the hands of kids in need, because the organizations they work with relate to the kids that they're servicing. And so it was this fantastic win-win. And we thought this was such a great example, and we were so amped up about it. And then something else happened that even escalated our excitement. And that was when our executive director heard through the grapevine that Kyle had actually said to publishers, look, I'm buying a lot of books from you, and I've noticed that none of these books that you create relate to the demographic I serve, which is kids experiencing poverty. It might be a good idea to start making books like that, or maybe I just won't buy as many books from you. And what's great about this is that it's an example of the typical mindset of an entrepreneur who's always looking for ways that the market can evolve so that it better solves the social problems their social enterprise addresses. And so our executive director was so excited about this, started talking about it, but then for the longest time, we didn't hear anything else about it until this happened. First Book releases Tidal Raves. And this is actually a list of 10 books that make an impact according to educators serving kids in need. And what's great about it is that they relate to children who are either socially or economically disenfranchised. So for example, The Benefits of Being an Octopus is about children in poverty. The Bridge Home is about a child who is homeless. And so not only did she enhance the power of books that relate to her key social demographic, these books are now available to this demographic, but she's also encouraging more of these books to be out there. And she's making money by selling these books to the institutions that serve kids in need. And this is an example of always being on the lookout for how to be creative and how you combine the social and entrepreneurial to serve your mission of social enterprise. And so we think this new era of creativity and reimagining has such great potential of where we could go with social entrepreneurship. And the possibilities are endless and very exciting. This brings us to the end of our series of sessions on rethinking social entrepreneurship. And I hope you leave today with a better understanding of the types of conversations that are beginning to happen in this space, and the need to focus this conversation on the potential of what this space could be. There's no one way to do social entrepreneurship, and there's no one way to solve social problems. Our goal has been to explore how organizations are using social enterprise as a tool to address their missions, how they're tapping into the pull of markets for social good, and how they're blending the social and entrepreneurial in ways that can either cause pressure points or momentum. A reminder that during these sessions, we introduced a number of tools. In part 1, we talked about the 4 ways business models can solve a social problem. And in part 3, we talked about the Blender Canvas tool. You can run your own social enterprise ideas through these tools and explore the different ways you can solve social problems and how you can bring together the social and entrepreneurial to achieve your goals. Thank you.